What do you do when you have religious beliefs such as honor thy parents, but your parents, or one of them, is on the pathological narcissism spectrum? How do you honor a person who has abusive, neglectful, or toxic behavior? How do you honor a person who inherently cannot empathize with your needs? A lot of my clients from around the world are spiritual or religious, and they deal with deep guilt and confusion because they want to feel peace, but they also want to do what seems right for them according to their religious beliefs. And they believe that they have no choice but to obey, and they believe that they're bad people if they don't obey their parents. And it can be even more confusing because at a first glance, what could be so horrible about honoring your own parents? I mean, they did everything for you, right? Honoring thy parents can feel like a sacred commandment, but it's really painful when it's used as a form of control. Hey guys, if you found any value in this video, then download your 10 steps to stop your narcissistic parents' control. You can find the link in the description below. I think we can start off this video by saying that religion can be used in a myriad of different ways. Religion can connect you to something greater than yourself. It can connect you with meaning, gratitude, purpose, contribution, giving of yourself. All of these themes that are universal spiritual themes. That means they just show up in different ways, in different practices and religious paths throughout the world. But the reality is, we can only interpret something according to what our personality structure allows us to interpret. This means that if you're dealing with someone who is inherently incapable or reluctant to connect with empathy, then the way that they're going to interpret religious texts is not going to include empathy for your needs because their personality doesn't function that way. On the other hand, if you have a person who's pretty stable, very loving, very respectful of your boundaries, they can interpret the same religious text in a completely different way. So the first thing I want you to ask yourself is if you trust the interpretation of reality in much the same way that religion can be used to reconnect someone to a second chance at life, to community, to meaning, to transcendence. Religion can also be used to create lifelong obedience and silence. But these teachings were meant to build love and mutual respect, not to facilitate harm. So if you're confused about how to honor your narcissistic parents, it might be a good opportunity for us to figure out what honoring parents even means. And what would that mean to someone who doesn't have a controlling, antagonistic personality? First and foremost, I want to introduce you to a concept, if you don't know it already, called spiritual gaslighting. So spiritual gaslighting is when somebody uses spiritual concepts, language, and authority to invalidate, confuse, or control another person's sense of reality and emotions. It's a type of psychological manipulation that hides behind spiritual ideas, such as love, forgiveness, honoring thy parents, karma, enlightenment. So essentially, someone who's engaging in spiritual gaslighting, they're going to use these spiritual things to make another person feel guilty for setting boundaries, doubt their own perception of things, and minimize their pain. So here are some common examples of spiritual gaslighting. They might invalidate you with a love and light rhetoric, saying something like, "You're being negative, just focus on love," or "Forgiveness is an important part of being a Christian." And this might be another way of saying, "Don't question the harm I've caused," or "Don't express any real emotion or needs." Spiritual gaslighters use forgiveness as a weapon, because if you were truly spiritual, you would just forgive and move on. And this is used to avoid accountability or silence justified anger. Spiritual gaslighters might make you feel you're too attached to your ego if you set boundaries, because if you were more spiritual, you wouldn't have any boundaries. They might twist spiritual teachings to justify abuse or control. And this is what happens with narcissistic and controlling parents who are religious and try to use this commandment of honoring thy parents as a way to shut their children up. So you never want to underestimate how important it is to fully understand what the personality structure of the person who is uttering these spiritual sayings is. Because if they're controlling and antagonistic, that's how they're going to use spiritual teachings. If they're not, then they're not going to use it in that way. Unless they're being manipulated by someone else who is controlling and antagonistic. When it comes to analyzing who is uttering the spiritual teachings, you also want to take into account people who know nothing about toxic family systems, who aren't even able to acknowledge that such family systems exist. People who maybe aren't overtly abusive, but who are part of your church or religious community, but don't know anything about the dynamics that you deal with in private with that narcissistic parent of yours. They also don't have all of the information in order to be able to tell you what honoring your parents means. So what if honoring your parents could mean something else, something truly healthy and revolutionary and positive for your family line? Maybe honoring isn't obedience. Maybe it's choosing to break the cycle and do something with your life that is more healthy than what the past people in your family lineage have been able to do. Maybe that's honoring the life that was given to you. Maybe honoring your parents could mean learning from their mistakes, learning from their wounds, not repeating them. Maybe honoring your parents means not trying to change them. And this means accepting fully that they have limitations and that people don't change unless they put in the effort themselves. So maybe honoring them is about accepting reality and knowing that they did what they could with the resources they got, but that they might not move beyond that point ever in this lifetime. Maybe honoring your parents could be interpreted as reframing boundaries, as a way of you protecting not only yourself, but your parents. Because in their infantile personality function, they know not what they do. In other words, they have a hard time taking accountability for what they do. And if people around them keep enabling them, then this isn't helpful for the family either. When you maintain your boundaries, you're not enabling them. And this could be interpreted as an act of spiritual compassion. One very religious client told me once, in my mind, honoring my parents means doing the very best that I can do with the life that was given to me. And this means I'm going to do a lot of things differently than my parents did, and their parents did, and so on and so forth. And this definition of honoring felt aligned with this particular client's values. Because you can't ignore your values as you try to create sanity and distance with regards to narcissistic parents. The reality is, all of us little spirits or souls or whatever you believe in came to earth with our own free will. The right to choose peace, safety, and whatever seems true and valuable to you. Personal freedom can't be misconstrued as some sort of attack against the family system. It could be interpreted as alignment with the sacred design of individuality. If you're singular, if there's nobody in the whole wide world that has your set of experiences and characteristics, then why would the Creator want to diminish and efface that? Surely you have something to give that nobody else can give in the way that you would do it. How beautiful and sacred and valuable is your individuality then? Individuation, stepping into the self that you want to be, getting to know your true values, your inner voice, not being confused by other people's voices all the time. Individuation are acts of spiritual maturity, not defiance. I mean, it may defy the status quo, but your purpose behind individuating is to make full use of all the gifts that you as a singular individual were gifted. How is it possible for you to honor that which created you if it gave you a nervous system that can gauge when something is a threat? And you're constantly ignoring this message that you receive from your own intuition, your gut feeling, and your nervous system, and doing things that make you feel like you are in danger because you're being manipulated to go against your values and ignore your own needs. So far we've noticed that religious teachings can be used for good and for evil. You really have to take into consideration the personality functioning of the person who is interpreting these religious scriptures. If they're antagonistic and controlling, their interpretation will be as well. If they don't have information about toxic family systems, then their interpretation is lacking. It's lacking information. It's lacking know-how. Then their interpretation is incomplete and unsuitable for the specific situation. We've also seen that you can define in your own terms what honoring your parents means. Now, I get that along with this desire to be aligned with honoring your parents, you might also fear punishment, not just from your family or your religious community, but from the divine. If honoring your parents is pleasing to God, then what will happen to you if you go against what your parents want? Well, this is a good moment for you to analyze the way that you've been experiencing your religion. There's religion based on fear, and there's faith based on love. You can influence people's behavior through threats of punishment, be it divine or otherwise, or ostracism. But you can also influence people's behavior through faith, love, connection, freedom, and respect. If you experience religion based on fear, then setting healthy boundaries will definitely make you feel afraid that your family, community, or God will punish you. But if you experience religion and faith based on love, then rest assured that choosing health, peace, and boundaries are never going to separate you from the divine. It'll connect you more deeply to whatever experience of God it is that you have? Would a loving creator ask you to destroy yourself to prove devotion? Now, mind you, I'm not saying that a loving creator wouldn't challenge us. A lot of things are painful, but also deeply meaningful because they invite us to grow, to strive for more, to develop, and to not take no for an answer. But when it comes to spiritual gaslighting, we're talking about control, oppression, and things that are never going to expand or develop you. So is that what your creator wants for you? Stagnation, smallness, fear? Or do they want you to believe that you have a father or a mother or whatever it is that you believe in that's even stronger in their ability for love than your human physical parents were? So to sum it up, I urge you to reinterpret your healing path towards individuation as a spiritual path, as something that is good and valuable in a way to end generational pain, or at least diminish it, or at least lessen it. Remember, you can still be faithful to your religion, and you can even love your parents if you love your parents, and still choose health, freedom, and peace. So if you're religious and this is something that has confused you in the past, what is your interpretation of honoring thy parents? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this video useful, you might also like this other video here.